13th of January 2012, the Mediterranean Sea. Over 4,200 passengers and crew are having a relaxing Friday evening. They are eating dinner in grand dining rooms, watching magic shows in the theater, and drinking wine. It is supposed to be a perfect, peaceful vacation. But in just a few hours, this billion-dollar megaship will be lying on its side, slowly sinking into the dark, freezing water. This is not a story about a bad storm or a sudden mechanical failure. This is a story about human pride, terrible decisions, and the absolute collapse of leadership. How does one of the safest, most advanced ships in the world sink in perfect calm waters? Modern cruise ships are packed with highly advanced technology. They have computers that check the exact depth of the water, GPS systems that show every single rock, and automated alarms that ring loudly if the ship goes off its safe course. Under normal conditions, hitting a massive island reef is almost impossible. The computer simply wouldn't let it happen. The Costa Concordia was sailing past the small Italian island of Biglio. The captain of the ship, Schettino, decided he wanted to give a sail-by salute. This is an unofficial tradition. The captain steered the giant ship very close to the island, blowing the loud horn and flashing bright light to show off for the people on the shore. It is a dangerous stunt, but it is often tolerated because it looked impressive to the tourists. To do this, Captain Schettino had to turn off the computer alarms and steer the massive ship by hands in the dark. He wanted to get as close to the island as possible, but he got too close. At 9:45 p.m., the passengers in the dining room felt a sudden violent shake. The plate crashed to the floor. The lights flickered. Down below the water, the ship had smashed into a solid granite reef at 15 knots, which is about 17 miles per hour. The rock was so hard, and the ship was moving so fast, that it tore a massive hole in the left side of the hull. The gash was 53 meters long. A massive piece of granite reef actually broke off and got stuck inside the steel of the ship. To understand why the ship sunk so fast, we have to look at the physics of the hull. A modern cruise ship is not just one big empty box. The bottom of the ship is divided into separate watertight compartments. If the ship gets a hole in it, heavy steel doors slide shut to trap the water in just one area. The Costa Concordia was mathematically designed to survive if any two of these compartments next to each other fluttered. The ship would sit a little lower in the water, but it would not sink. But the sharp reef was deadly. It did not just open one or two compartments. The long gash ripped open three of the most important compartments on the ship. These were the engine rooms. Thousands of tons of freezing ocean water violently rushed inside. Within minutes, the water completely covered the massive electric generators. The ship went completely dark. Without power, the ship lost all its engine and its ability to steer. It was now just a dead piece of metal floating in the wind, but the water kept coming. As thousands of tons of water filled the bottom of the ship, the physics of the vessel began to change. This is caused by something called the free surface effect. When water is trapped inside a ship, it does not stay still. As the ship gently rocks in the ocean waves, that massive weight of loose water sloshes from side to side. Every time the water rushes to one side, it pulls the ship down with it. It completely destroys the ship's center of gravity. Because the ship lost its power, it drifted closer to the shore, and the wind began to push its tall upper decks. Between the wind pushing the top and the heavy water pulling the bottom, the massive ship started to lean heavily to the right side. At this point, the ship was dying. The crew down in the flooded engine room knew it. But up on the command bridge, Captain Schettino was not telling the truth. The Italian Coast Guard noticed the ship had stopped moving on their radar and called the captain. Instead of telling them the ship was torn open and taking on water, the captain lied. He told the Coast Guard that they just had a simple electrical blackout and were fixing it. The passengers were also lied to. They were told over the loudspeaker to stay calm and go back to their rooms. This was a fatal delay. In a disaster, the first hour is the most important. If the captain had sounded the general emergency alarm immediately, all 4,200 people could have easily gotten into the lifeboats while the ship was still flat. Instead, they waited nearly an hour before the official abandon ship order was finally given. By this time, it was too late for a normal evacuation. The ship was leaning so far to the right that the lifeboats on the left side could not be lowered. They were stuck against the side of the metal hull. Total panic broke out. Passengers were sleeping on the tilted decks in the dark. The angle was so steep that walking became impossible. Some people jumped into the freezing water to swim to the island. While thousands of terrified passengers were still trapped on the sinking ship, the ultimate failure of leadership happened. Captain Schettino abandoned his ship. He climbed into a lifeboat and left his passenger behind. When the Coast Guard realized the captain had run away, the Coast Guard commander called him on radio. He was absolutely furious.
Pronto? Sì, sono De Falco da Livorno, comandante. Sì, il comandante, si guarda. Pronto? Sì, buonasera, comandante. Senta, io sono De Falco da Livorno, parlo col comandante? Sì, buonasera, comandante Di Falco. Mi dica il suo nome, per favore. Il comandante Schettino, comandante. Schettino? Sì. Ascolti, Schettino. Ci sono persone intrappolate a bordo, adesso lei va con la sua scialuppa. Sotto la prua della nave, lato dritto, c'è una biscaggina. Lei sale su quella biscaggina e va a bordo della nave. Va a bordo della nave e mi viene a dire, mi riporta quante persone ci sono. È chiaro? Io sto registrando questa comunicazione, comandante Schettino. Allora, comandante, le dico una cosa. Parli a voce alta. Allora, la nave adesso, io sono qua di fronte... Comandante, parli a voce più alta, metta la mano davanti al microfono e parla a voce alta. Chiaro? Fallo venire un attimo, fallo venire qua. Allora, in questo momento la nave è inclinata. Ho capito. C'è gente, ascolti, c'è gente che sta scendendo dalla biscaggina di prua. Lei quella biscaggina la percorre in senso inverso, sale sulla nave e mi dice quante persone e che cosa hanno a bordo, chiaro? Gli dice se ci sono bambini, donne o persone bisognose di assistenza e me ne dice il numero di ciascuna di queste categorie. È chiaro? Guardi, Schettino, che lei si è salvato forse dal mare, ma io la porto veramente molto male, faccio passare l'anima di guai. Vado a bordo, cazzo! Comandante, per cortesia. No, per cortesia, lei adesso prende e va a bordo. Mi assicuri che sta andando a bordo. Io sto andando qua con la lancia dei soccorsi, sono sotto qua, non sono andato da nessuna parte, sono qua. Che sta facendo, comandante? Sto qua per coordinare i soccorsi. Che sta coordinando lì? Vado a bordo, mi coordini i soccorsi da bordo. Lei si rifiuta? No, non mi sto rifiutando. Lei si sta rifiutando di andare a bordo, comandante? No, ci sto andando. E mi dica qual è il motivo per cui non ci va. Ci sto andando perché ci sta l'altra lancia che si è fermata. Lei vada a bordo, è un ordine. Lei non deve fare altre valutazioni. Lei ha dichiarato l'abbandono nave. Adesso comando io. Lei vada a bordo. È chiaro?
Despite the Coast Guard screaming orders, the captain never went back to his ship. A massive, chaotic rescue operation by the Coast Guard and local citizens saved most of the people. But tragically, 32 people lost their life that night. They died because they were told to wait in their rooms until the ship tilted too far to escape. The next morning, the sun rose over a shocking sight. The billion-dollar pride of the Italian fleet was lying completely on its side, resting on the shallow rock. But the disaster was not over. The ship was fully loaded with heavy fuel oil. If the weakened metal hull cracked in half and leaked the oil, it would create an environmental nightmare for the beautiful Italian coast. The ship had to be moved. But how do you move a 114,000-ton shipwreck? You cannot just blow it up or cut it into small pieces because the oil will spill everywhere. The engineers had to do something that had never been done on this massive scale before. It was an operation called parbuckling. It cost $1.2 billion, which was actually more than it cost to build the ship in the first place. First, teams of divers worked underwater for months. They drilled massive steel platforms deep into the solid granite ocean floor to create a stable base. Then, they welded giant hollow metal boxes to the high side of the ship. Finally, they used thick steel cables and powerful hydraulic jets. Slowly, inch by agonizing inch, they pulled the heavy ship. They pumped water into the metal boxes to use gravity to help pull the ship upright. It took 19 hours of perfect, careful engineering to slowly roll the massive ship back onto its flat bottom, resting on the new underwater platform. Once it was stable, they attached more metal boxes to the other side, pumped the water out of them, and floated the dead ship so it could be towed away and cut apart for scrap metal. The tragedy of the Costa Concordia was a massive wake-up call for the entire world. It showed how quickly modern technology can fail when human arrogance takes over. Because of the 32 people who died, international maritime laws were rewritten to make sure this never happens again. Before 2012, cruise ships were allowed to hold their mandatory safety drill up to 24 hours after leaving the dock. That meant many people on the Concordia had just spotted and had no idea where their lifeboats were when the disaster hit. Today, the law is strict. Every single passenger must complete the safety drill before the ship is ever allowed to leave the port. Navigation alarms are now knocked down so that a single captain cannot easily turn them off just to show off. A cruise ship is a complex machine that relies on the strict law of physics to stay afloat. But it also relies on a chain of command, honesty, and responsibility. When the computer alarms were silenced and the truth was hidden, the physics of the ocean took over. Thank you for watching.